Now then, Final Monkey here again in my series of top 10s. This week, well, what a day for me this is, because this is my attempt at trying to articulate my top 10 Van Morrison LPs. And I don't know, since that day in probably the early 70s when I first heard Van Morrison on the old grey whistle test, and went out and got a second-hand copy of Astral Weeks. Since that day, I've just been absolutely, mesmerised by Van Morrison's work and art, and I've got all of his 42 studio albums, most of his live albums there as well. And I've seen him, I don't know, I've lost count of how many times I've seen him playing from everywhere, from festivals to arenas to city halls to the pleasure and privilege of seeing him in a small village arts centre in Bellaghy in Northern Ireland a couple of years ago, just with a crowd of 200 people, which was absolutely fantastic. But and I've got tickets to see him again in Derry in a couple of weeks, all being well, so looking forward to that. But so this has been really difficult to try and organise such a body of work into what my totally subjective top 10 favourites are, but and I'll maybe say a little bit at the end about some of them that aren't there. I think there might be one or two sort of surprises for those of you who are familiar with Van Morrison's work in my favourites, but anyway, here goes. So my number 10, and I'm gonna before I go on to my number 10, I'm gonna say I really agonised over the number 10, because I think my numbers 9 to 1, I think they would be the same if I do this. They might be in a slightly different order at some points, but they'd be the same 9 albums, I think, if I did this next month or the month after or next year, because I think they stand out as absolute masterpieces, and I don't use that word lightly. Why are they masterpieces? Because they are fully formed works of art. They are coherent. They are a whole. They are something that you feel from beginning to end. It's one piece. It's not a collection of songs. It's not a sort of uneven collection of songs. They're fully realised works of art, and I think my numbers 9 to 1 are masterpieces. And one might argue that there are other masterpieces in the Van Morrison catalogue, but I just think there are 30 odd other brilliant albums, all of them containing some absolutely standout songs. Van Morrison hasn't made a bad album, in my opinion. He did perhaps come close with his last one, latest record project, but it's not a bad album. It's got a great sound. There are some good songs. He was clearly pissed off with coronavirus, the way the government particularly was handling the coronavirus lockdown situations. That had got to him, like it got to all of us, I think. And for me anyway, that came close to spoiling that album a little bit. But it's not a bad album. As I say, he hasn't made a bad one, and there are absolutely standout tracks on every single one of Van Morrison's 42 studio albums and the live albums. So anyway, so the number 10 could have been any album of 20 odd really, and but I ended up choosing this one from 2018, this is a collaboration, and Van's done a lot of collaborations over the time, everyone from Chieftains to Lonnie Donegan, Tom Jones, Cliff Richard, Johnny Hooker. But this one's with a guy called Joey DeFranco, who's an American jazz musician, organist and trumpeter. And this is it's a double album. There's a great picture, I don't know whether you can see it there, of DeFranco and Morrison in the back of a taxi, sort of laughing and joking on there, another image on the front there. And that relationship and that friendship and respect for each other comes across right through this album. It's a mixture really of sort of rehashes of Van Morrison's songs, so Magic Time, All Saints Day, The Way Young Lovers Do from Astral Weeks, Close Enough for Jazz, and some blues jazz standards, sorry. And it's an album that was apparently made in just a couple of days, and I think that shows really. It feels like a live album, it feels really, really fresh. There's just a small tight band. It's DeFranco's band, which is I think a 4 or 5 piece band. Van Morrison's in absolutely fantastic voice. He just seems absolutely relaxed. There's sort of laughter at the end of some of the tracks. It feels like you're in a small club watching them. Lovely album. Standout tracks for me: the opening track, Miss Otis Regrets, and the reworking of Magic Time. So anyway, that's my number 10, Van Morrison and Joey DeFranco. My number 9 goes back all the way to 1971, and this is Tupelo Honey, which was Van Morrison's 4th solo album, or 5th if you count Blowing Your Mind, but 4th under his own steam really. And this was a period where he was married, he was happily married at that time to Janet Planet. They were living out in Woodstock in America. They were living just up the road from Dylan and the band, and it comes across that sort of air of contentment, not just in the songs, in the cover if you like. I mean, it's a great photo of Van Morrison sat there with Janet, and on the front there leading a horse with Janet riding the horse, and this is it's sort of tender, it's gentle, it's gorgeous, it's just a lovely album, and I think it's summed up by the title track, which is the strongest track in my view on this album, Tupelo Honey itself. Absolutely beautiful, a stunning track. If you want to listen to a version of it on YouTube, I think there's a version, which came out slightly, a few years after this, where Van Morrison has Pee Wee Ellis, which I'll mention probably later in this video, the saxophonist, and they do an absolutely stunning version of Tupelo Honey there. If you key in Van Morrison Tupelo Honey, it'll come up. But lovely album. That's my number 9, Tupelo Honey from 1971. My number 8 is Beautiful Vision from 1982, and this is when I really started to get into watching Van Morrison live quite a lot, and I think he had an absolute golden period in the 1980s. I mean, for me it was a decade when a lot of music turned to shit really, with the new romantics and the sort of some of the post-punk stuff. I really felt it went down, poor productions, awful sort of synthesized sounds. But this one, it's absolutely beautiful, it's relaxing, it's meditative. I mean, it's based around sort of new age philosophy, which I don't even pretend to ever have got into at all, but lots of mystical imagery. But you don't need to be into that, or even to worry about that. It's just a beautiful, enjoyable, relaxing listen. And I think for me the 2 standout tracks on this one, Dweller on the Threshold, the opening sorry, it's not the opening track, it's the third track on side one, and the Van Lowe's Stairway, which is a track on side two, and I always did wonder what that was about. It's a sort of reaching up, and it's a sort of semi-religious, spiritual sort of sounding song mixed with a love song, but apparently Van Lowe's is simply an area of Denmark that his then girlfriend lived in, and so it's based around that. But it's a great example of Van mixing the sort of real and the spiritual, and beautiful stuff, beautiful vision from 1982. My number 7 is the one that followed that one in 1983. This is Inarticulate Speech of the Heart. This got poor reviews, and I remember two of my mates who were even into Van Morrison at the time not liking this one. They felt it was too much synthesizer on it. Mark Isham, the trumpeter, he was given free rein on the synthesizers for this, and but again, I think this is for me, it's hypnotic. It reminds me of, I used to have this on the car stereo, my old Cortina, driving around the Lake District and the Yorkshire Dales. I just remember it's sort of beautiful, contemplative sort of music. There are 4 instrumentals on here, which again I think some people thought, well, that's a bit much especially for one of the world's greatest singing voices, to put instrumentals on there. But I love it, and for me, this is my number 7. This is Inarticulate Speech of the Heart from 1983. Standout track, I think. I love the instrumentals on here actually, but the standout track, probably Rave On John Donne. So that's my number 7. My number 6. This is No Guru, No Method, No Teacher, again from his 80s period. This is 1986. The title of the album, No Guru, No Method, No Teacher, is apparently taken from a sort of philosopher teacher called Krishnamurti, who was involved with the Theosophy movement. I mean, Van Morrison was, particularly through this sort of period, late 70s, 80s, flirting with Christianity, Scientology, Theosophy, various sort of channels to in his search for sort of spiritual meaning, I suppose. And but Krishnamurti, who was apparently he was being groomed by the Theosophists as a sort of world leader, he rejected all of that, and he said, there is no guru, no method, and no teacher. There is no link between us on earth and anything that might be out there greater than us. So it's a beautiful album. It links back to his first album, I think, with a lot of the lyrics and imagery. The sort of in the garden, wet with rain, is a line that sort of links the two albums. And for me, the standout track on this one is in fact In the Garden, which is the sort of middle of the LP, last track on side one. Listen to it, listen to the beautiful piano alongside Van's voice, which is at its absolute peak, I think, on this particular song. So No Guru, No Method, No Teacher, my number 6 from 1986. My number 5, sorry, I've just moved that note. This is from 1979. This is Into the Music. Absolutely brilliant band Van had put together for this. He brought in Pee Wee Ellis on saxophone, Mark Isham on trumpet, and he brought a violinist as well in on this album. I'm looking for the name of the violinist, which gives the album a distinctive sound. I can't. Oh yeah, Tony Marcus. That's right. Yeah. And this is a sort of mix between, I think that in the first half of the album it's sort of poppy, it's soul-y, it's gospel-y. Bright Side of the Road, of course, nearly almost troubled the singles charts. It's really sort of positive, uplifting stuff. And then in the second half it really goes into some of the most beautiful love songs I think Van Morrison's ever delivered, which culminates in an absolutely brilliant sort of version of the pop standard It's All in the Game, but melded with Van's own lyrics and tune, You Know What They're Writing About, and he just merges the two into an 11-minute absolute classic. And I remember watching this live and being absolutely mesmerised by it, and it is the most beautiful rendition of a 3-letter word that I have ever heard. I mean it comes across to some extent on the album itself, but live during that period when he sang and it was going and I will kiss your lips, but that and was stretched. I can't even pretend to mimic it, but the word and was stretched over many bars, and absolutely stunning, beautiful, and yeah, brilliant. But give that one a go. It's All in the Game. On Into the Music. That's my number 5. My number 4, this is one I actually remember going to the shop for this. I used to order them for the day they were due out, and this is Common One from 1980. And when I first heard it I thought whoa, because it followed on from Into the Music, which I said was uplifting, gospel-y, sort of feel good, and this one really slow, jazz orientated. There are 2 15-minute long tracks on here, and yeah, different, experimental, definitely Van going down a different sort of direction. But it only took a few listens and I really loved this. In fact, I've ruined my favourite track on here, Summertime in England, the middle track, the second track on side 1, through, you know, lifting the needle back and forward. I used to play that track time after time, and this is Van Morrison's sort of hymn to his favourite poets, Blake, T.S. Eliot, Wordsworth and Coleridge, Yeats, Joyce, etc. But it's just such a, well, it's a one-off in Van's canon, I would suggest. But the whole album, I think, on reflection and the longer you know, I think over time it's probably been reappraised, and as you know, while it was dismissed, I think, when it first came out by many, I would guess a lot of people now recognise this for the genius it is. Really, it is an absolutely unique and stunning album, and I think the 2 15-minute tracks are the 2 classics. So that's Summertime in England, and then the final track, When Heart Is Open, which, I mean, it's so slow, it almost stops really as it's going through it, but it's absolutely beautiful. So that's my number 4, Common One from 1980. My number 3 is Poetic Champions Compose from 1987, yeah. And I think this album sums up Van's 1980s sort of themes for me, and this is the probably, as I said, I think the 1980s for me was a particularly golden period for Van Morrison, and I think this is the pinnacle for me. You know, his search for spirituality, his search for satisfaction, for love, through poetry and meditation. I think it's just beautifully done. It's sophisticated, it's articulate, it's sort of jazzy to a certain extent, it's intelligent, and for me this is his 1980s masterwork. So that's my number 3, Poetic Champions Compose from 1987. Excuse me. My number 2 is from 1974. This is Vernon Fleece. I used to try and find out what a Vernon Fleece was and never could, and apparently in some interview Van Morrison said he had absolutely no idea what it was, but it's some sort of mythical thing that you're searching for, and you know, whether that's metaphorical for meaning of life or whatever. But this album was made after Van Morrison returned. He'd been in America for 6 years. He hadn't been in Ireland at all. And he returned to the Republic of Ireland and spent 6 weeks there touring around. And he wrote these songs while he was there. That's a picture of him just outside Dublin with the Irish Wolfhounds on the front, taken from that period. He had a new girlfriend, his marriage had broken up. And this is sort of, it name drops a lot of Irish sort of towns and places, and in some way it's seen, I think, rightly or wrongly, as a bit of a sort of search, Van Morrison searching for his Irish identity. And I guess, I don't know, I may be totally off the mark, and I trust Van Morrison will never watch this, otherwise he'll be calling me all sorts, I suppose, but for trying to speculate on somebody's private life when A, it's none of my business, and B, I would have no idea what I was talking about. But in my own head, I've always assumed that as a sort of Ulster Protestant, father worked in Harlan, Wolf, etc., East Belfast, that yet sort of open-minded and open-hearted and interested in sort of history and spirituality, and that he's perhaps struggled with that Ulster Protestant identity that he was sort of born with, and that's been part of his seeming lifelong search through his music around identity. But I say I might be totally off the mark, but in any event, this, which is Van Morrison's seventh album, maybe eighth album, is an absolute masterpiece. It is definitely a whole piece of work. It just feels and sounds like one piece of work. You put it on, you don't really want to, you don't want to stop it, you don't want to flick back to a track or anything. The band, sort of quiet and understated, but beautiful nonetheless, and fit in with that sort of Irish identity sort of theme. The standout tracks for me are You Don't Pull No Punches, You Don't Pull No Punches, But You Don't Push the River, which is a great title as well, and Country Fair and The Streets of Arklow. I think absolutely beautiful album, and that's my number 2, Vernon Fleece. And then there's probably no surprise on my number 1, but I like to be contrary and different usually, but I can't be in this because I've gone for Van's first proper solo album, Astral Weeks from 1968, and it's just stunning. I mean, I probably everybody who's watching this has heard it, but if you haven't, just try and listen to this. It's one of those albums where you listen to it and you just wonder, where the heck has that come from? It defies categorization. It just, the streams of consciousness that are emanating from Van. I mean, what's the opening lines? Between the viaducts of your dream, high into the slipstream, between the viaducts of your dream. Yeah, I mean, it's just, uncategorized, but I'm lost for words actually. So this is absolutely beautiful, and the band on it, this was also put together in 2 days. I think due to a lack of any budget at the time or anything, but Van Morrison had gone over to New York. He had all these songs in his head. He'd flirted about with some of them before, but these were things which were just inside of him, and they're all relating to his sort of Belfast childhood. But in not in direct ways, but in sort of using imagery and stuff that you just wouldn't. You can't categorise. And so they got some session musicians, jazz session musicians, Richard Davis on bass, Connie Kay on drums, Jay Berliner on guitar. Now at least two of those, no, all three of them I think, yeah, all three of them have appeared on subsequent Van Morrison albums right up until recent times. I think Jay Berliner was on his last one, or one but last. But yeah, this is absolutely beautiful. This is my number one. This is Astral Weeks from 1968. So that's my Van Morrison top 10. Sorry, Mr. Morrison, if you ever watch this. You know, people sort of sometimes complain about Van Morrison, but I mean, for me, you know, I believe I've said this before. You know, I do not conflate an artist's work with themselves and their own private personalities, and I think they are. You know, they can be seen as two separate things, and so you know, I'm not interested in Van Morrison's sort of personal life or his personality. All I know is that he is one of the greatest artists of the 20th, 21st century in relation to popular music. And I've mentioned 10 albums, so there's 30 odd albums I haven't mentioned. I haven't mentioned any of the brilliant albums from the 90s, the Healing Game, Days Like This, albums like that. Loads of good albums, Keep It Simple, Three Chords and the Truth from the 2000s. And I haven't mentioned Moondance, and people, if anybody does comment, they'll probably put that comment on and say, well, what about Moondance? Surely everybody has that in their top 10. And I give it a few new listens, and it is a great album. There's some of his best ever songs there. Stone Me, Into the Mystic, Caravan, brilliant songs. But I think it's a bit of an uneven album, so I don't think it stands as one of those masterpieces, those coherent masterpieces. I think it is a little bit uneven. And the other thing is just the track Moondance itself. I've heard it in so many lifts and shopping centres and what have you, that I just really don't like that particular track anymore. It's been overdone, and I've also had it sort of covered really, really badly by sort of middle of the road artists. So anyway, apologies to anyone who thinks Moondance should have been up there. It is a great album, but not in my top 10. So that's it. Hope you join me next time. Any comments welcome. Thanks for watching. Cheers.